Sam, thanks for joining us on Pars TV's halftime show. To give a bit of context for the supporters watching, of course, it's normally a former Dunfermline player or someone connected to the club that talks to us at halftime, but we wanted to speak to you because you've been involved in Scottish football over a number of years now from the playing side, but you've decided to move in a different direction and you've obviously publicised your story. So could you just give everybody a kind of general overview of kind of where we are with your situation?
Sure thing, Jordan. So it's maybe a different voice than the one that the kind of fans are used to hearing. But as you said, my name is Sam Wardrop, and essentially the way I would define my situation is that I'm a footballer on a break from football. I'm 24 years old, and I decided in the last, I think probably the last 4 or 5 months to take a break from football. I was playing for Airdrie and I wasn't happy playing football anymore. And I felt as though I'd played it obviously since I was a wee boy, professional at different clubs, which we'll maybe get into, but I just felt as though it wasn't serving me the way it had done in the past, and it was making me more unhappy than I should have been. And I didn't really want to feel these kind of emotions towards football, and I didn't think it was right to keep playing. So I essentially took a break from playing football to focus on a business that I've got going, a kind of coaching business.
In terms of the Dunfermline fans listening, they'll know from recent weeks that the club are looking to restart their own youth academy, which is obviously great for the local youngsters in West Fife and for Dunfermline fans that want to play for their local team that they support. For yourself, you went through that academy structure in terms of at Celtic. How would you say going through an academy structure at such a young age kind of benefits or maybe negatively affects a youngster growing up, and how has that maybe got you to where you are today in terms of the situation that you find yourself in?
So my experience of being a youth player, I was at Celtic for best part of 10 years, and I think youth academies are fantastic. I think they're very, very good, in particular for young boys. I think not only do you get access to more training, you're around the club that you probably support if the lads are local. You get a kind of taste for the first team players. You might see them around. You'll be more involved in the club. But I think out with football, it gives you a really good upbringing. It gives you a really good grounding. You can learn a lot, not just about football, but you learn a lot of other skills that are transferable. It keeps you. It gives you something to do in the evenings. It gives you something to do at the weekends for these lads, and it gives them from a young age the kind of responsibility that they have to be quite professional and independent and look after themselves. So personally, my experience, it was fantastic, and I think if you spoke to a lot of youth players, they would say that they probably wouldn't trade it, or a lot of former youth players, they wouldn't trade that experience, to not being involved in an academy setup. So I think it's fantastic to hear that is starting back up. Is that next season or?
It's starting in January 2022. I think the youth academy season, I think maybe is different from a regular season. I think they maybe run yearly rather than seasonal, if that makes sense. But I think it's starting up in January 2022. So obviously that's great for the youngsters in terms of getting in, and as you said, possibly for the team that they support in their local area, and trying to make that step, as you know yourself, that you tried to do, to try and work your way up the ladder and get into the first team and kind of make your dreams come true. So in terms of that then, when the time came for you to have to leave Celtic, is that where things started to maybe negatively affect you in terms of on the field situation?
No, I mean, I only really started to feel kind of negative feelings when I went part-time, because it's not as intense as full-time football. You have to do other things as well. And one of the things I did was start up a business, and I realised that I actually really enjoyed working in the business and doing some of the other things I do in social media. I discovered that I really liked those things, and those, the feelings that I used to get from football, those really positive feelings and emotions and stuff like that, they were starting to become less as I went part-time, and I was starting to get them more from the coaching side of things. So that was my reasoning behind my decision. But I think in terms of players growing up and when it comes to the time that they leave an academy set up, my experience was that I wasn't naive in the fact that when I got to the age of 20, I knew I wasn't going to play for Celtic and be part of the first team squad. So I was ready to move on and get another challenge, because at that age you're young, you're hungry, you want to, as you said, move up the ladder. So it came at a good time. I moved on to Dundee United and I was there for 2 years. And I think players, before that process, I'd gone out on loan to Dumbarton. And that was when I gained a lot of first team experience. I played a full season in the Championship. And that's probably crucial, critical for young players when they are starting to turn 18, 19, 20, rather than hang about in the academy. They should actively look to go out on loan and get that first team experience. Even if they want to play for, in this instance, Dunfermline, they have to think of the bigger picture and think, if they manage to get 3 seasons of first team football under their belt rather than no seasons, and then when it comes to 20, they maybe have to move on, at least they've got that kind of, couple of seasons in the kind of locker. And you see it all the time. You see young players in particular, they leave an academy and go elsewhere. Maybe they drop down, and after maybe 3, 4, 5 seasons, they return to the club that they were at as a first team player. So I would never want, my one thing to say to young players is, don't ever be disheartened if you have to move on from the club.
In terms of the situation that Dunfermline find themselves in at present, they've obviously had to change manager with them fighting relegation in the Championship this season. And of course, as we want to progress up the table as the season goes on, to alleviate those fears of getting relegated and potential consequences for the club that way, from your perspective, again, from a Scottish footballer's perspective, especially someone so young, how is the pressure of playing for a full-time team, knowing that the consequence could be you go out of full-time football and have to look for outside work and potentially go into part-time football, fall out the game, completely? How mentally draining is that situation? What kind of pressure will the Dunfermline players be under?
So it can be very tough, in particular, with players, because it is probably a bit of a split in terms of there'll be some players in that squad who have other things going on outside of football. Maybe they were part-time and they've moved full-time, so they've got maybe jobs or things they can go back to if it was the case that they had to go part-time. But then there'll be some players who've always been full-time who will have that worry of what's going to happen, my family, they get kids, they get mortgages, that sort of thing. So it is very tough. It's that's something in Scottish football that players have to contend with, is the fact that they don't, contracts for a start aren't very long term. They're not obviously as lucrative as a contract down south or up the top of the Premiership in Scotland. So it's definitely something that players have in the back of their mind always. I think it's becoming increasingly popular to, whether it be do some sort of degree outside of football or some sort of other job outside on the side. I think it's becoming more common for football players to do it. And there's nothing wrong with it, because you see the players down south that are doing it, the likes of the top players. Obviously these guys are millionaires, but they've got, different brand deals going on. They've got their hands in their own, creating their own brand, that sort of thing. So there's nothing wrong with doing other things as well as football. And I think some of the players will be lucky to have that, but other players won't, and that will be a worry in the back of their mind, and it is tough. But there'll always be something around the corner, no matter what happens,
So in terms of yourself, you've obviously said that you're taking a break from football, but I'm guessing from that you're looking to get back in at some stage. So what's the kind of process from your point of view in terms of being physically and mentally ready to return to the game?
So what I said to myself was, I'm definitely going to take a year out of football, and then I would review it after that year to see how I feel, what situation I'm in. And then make a decision what I'll be doing basically for the following year. But right now I've not had any thoughts about returning. But the one thing with myself is I've always been the kind of player who, I'll keep myself. I could play a game of football tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Just because I've been out of football for 4 months now, I still keep myself really fit. I train every day. It's just part of my lifestyle. So some players will be like that. They love kind of the fitness side of the game and looking after themselves. So I in terms of physically, I can go back and play football. It's just whether or not I want to. So that'll be a decision I make, in 6 months' time, kind of thing.
Again, going back to what we were saying to start with, a lot of people watching this might not be aware of yourself or what you've been doing over recent months. So to give them some context, you've been doing some work on YouTube, you've been doing your own kind of series in terms of coaching videos and lifestyle videos. We see players, say Ben Foster down in England, Watford goalkeeper, he's doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff as well in terms of in the football sector and basically what it's like as a professional. Do you think that your kind of videos, they kind of videos, do you think that really benefits people that maybe don't know the day-to-day workings of a football player and what they go through? Do you think that this could be a good opening at a really crucial time in terms of making people aware that it's not all rosy in the garden sometimes?
Yeah, I think so. So basically, I've got a football coaching business online and in person, but out with that, as you said, I make videos, and I kind of put videos out across a few platforms: TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And that is exactly what I do. Behind the scenes content, you see the day in the lives of a football player, day in the lives of an athlete type of thing. Those were the videos I was posting at the start. Obviously now they've transitioned into more what sort of things footballers and athletes do in terms of keeping themselves in really good condition, in terms of what they eat. And I think there's a number of people who like those videos, young players who want to try and play first team or play professional football. They get a lot from them. But even guys who are just happy with where they're at, whether they're playing with their mates or amateur, they can get a lot from the videos, and it can really improve their performance. And then lastly, fans, I think as well, find it very interesting to see, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at the club social media, the club only have access to the players when they're at the training ground or when they're at the game. Very rarely do you see what happens when the players go home or what they do in the evenings or what they do before they come to training, that sort of thing. And I think that's why people find the kind of behind the scene football videos very interesting, because they start to see that it's not just this kind of easy life where you roll up and you train, you go home, and then you turn up on a Saturday. There's more to it than that. There's a lot of looking after yourself. The way I saw playing football was that I was a 24/7 athlete. Like every hour of the day throughout the week, I was doing something geared towards performance, training and games.
As I said, we thought that getting you on would kind of highlight a lot of these issues, make it kind of Dunfermline related, but also Scottish football related as well. So what's your kind of overall message that you'd like the supporters to take away from listening to this interview today? What do you think getting these kind of interviews out there could do to benefit players going forward?
I think sometimes, not with every single fan, but sometimes fans maybe forget to see the full picture of a football player's life, in that they have families, they have homes, they have problems, they have good things in their life, they have bad things in their life. There's a lot of factors that players are contending with, not just training and games. So I think sometimes to have to get the perspective of what a full football player's life looks like can be really interesting. But I think it can also be good for the fans, because it can help them understand, maybe what a player's going through, or, just what's happening day to day. Can give better context for, maybe results or the way things are going at the club, that sort of thing. So there's always a bigger picture to look at in terms of for the fans. But I think for the young fans as well, I think they can take a lot from the content that I put out, but also other football players are putting out, and you see what it's like and how much you have to do to train at a top level and be a professional footballer.
As always, thanks for your time, Sam.
All right, thank you, mate. Cheers, pleasure.